Dutton Ranch Season 2 is officially confirmed, and the trailer has already revealed far more than most fans expected. The release date is locked in, but that is not the real story here. The real story is what the trailer quietly confirms about the future of this franchise. Beth and Rip are back, but for the first time, they may not be the center of everything. Carter and Oriana's storyline is being pushed forward in ways nobody predicted, and one shocking detail hidden inside the trailer suggests that Season 2 is not just a continuation. It is the beginning of something completely new. And once you see what Taylor Sheridan is actually planning, you will understand why this season could change the entire Yellowstone universe forever. The confirmation of Dutton Ranch Season 2 arrived with far more weight than a typical renewal announcement. When the official trailer dropped alongside the release date, it instantly became one of the most discussed moments in the recent history of the Yellowstone franchise. On the surface, this should have been a simple celebration. The show survived its first season, secured its future, and gave audiences a firm date to circle on their calendars. But the reaction across the fanbase tells a much more complicated story, and that complication begins with what the trailer chooses to show, and more importantly, what it chooses to hold back. From a business standpoint, the renewal was never really in doubt. The Yellowstone brand remains one of the most valuable properties in modern television, and Paramount has invested heavily in keeping that universe alive after the conclusion of the original series. Dutton Ranch was designed from the very beginning to carry that legacy forward, blending familiar faces with a new generation of characters capable of extending the story for years to come. The first season delivered strong viewership numbers, generated constant online discussion, and proved that audiences were still deeply invested in the fate of the ranch. In that sense, Season 2 was always coming. The only genuine questions were when it would arrive and what direction it would take. The trailer answers the first question clearly. The release date is now confirmed, and the marketing push has already begun. But the second question is where things become truly interesting. Because the moment the trailer arrived, longtime fans noticed something different about the way it was structured. Previous promotional material for this franchise almost always centered on the legacy characters. Beth and Rip carried the emotional weight. John Dutton's shadow loomed over every frame, and the newer characters were positioned around the edges of the story. This trailer flips that formula. Beth and Rip are present, and their scenes still carry enormous emotional power, but the spotlight has visibly shifted. Carter and Oriana occupy far more screen time than anyone anticipated, and their storyline is framed not as a subplot, but as the driving engine of the new season. That shift did not happen by accident. Throughout Season 1, the writing quietly laid the groundwork for this transition. Carter's evolution from a troubled outsider into someone genuinely shaped by ranch life mirrored the same journey that once made Rip Wheeler one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise. Oriana's introduction added a new dimension to that growth, giving Carter something to protect, something to fight for, and something to lose. By the end of the first season, it was clear that the show was preparing these two characters for something much bigger. The trailer now confirms that preparation is over. Season 2 is their moment, and the franchise is betting its future on whether audiences are ready to accept them at the center of the story. This is exactly where the divide within the fan base begins. For one group of viewers, this direction represents everything the show needs. They argue that Dutton Ranch cannot survive forever by leaning on Beth and Rip, no matter how popular those characters remain. A franchise that refuses to develop new leads eventually runs out of road, and Carter and Oriana offer the clearest path toward a future that does not depend entirely on nostalgia. For another group, however, this shift feels rushed. Beth and Rip earned their place at the heart of this universe through years of conflict, growth, and unforgettable moments. Carter and Oriana, by comparison, are still early in that journey. Pushing them into the spotlight before audiences are fully invested could backfire in ways that damage the entire series. But here is where the trailer becomes even more fascinating. Hidden within its structure are signs that Taylor Sheridan understands this risk completely, and that Season 2 has been built specifically to address it. The tone is noticeably darker. The conflicts appear larger and more dangerous than anything the first season attempted. And several brief moments suggest that the ranch itself is facing a threat unlike anything the Dutton family has encountered before. One that could force every character, old and new, into the same fight for survival. If that is true, then this season is not simply passing the torch. It is burning down the old structure and building something entirely new in its place. And the one detail that proves it might be the most shocking creative decision this franchise has ever made. Section 2. To understand why Season 2 marks the beginning of something entirely new, you have to look closely at what the trailer reveals about the state of the ranch itself. Because the story picking up in Season 2 is not the story fans left behind at the end of Season 1. Time has passed, circumstances have changed, and the consequences of every major decision made during the first season are now arriving all at once. The trailer makes this clear within its opening moments. The ranch that once represented stability and legacy now feels surrounded, pressured from every direction by forces that do not care about tradition, family history, or the Dutton name. And that pressure is exactly what separates this season from everything that came before it. The first and most obvious change involves the scale of the conflict. Season 1 spent much of its time establishing relationships, introducing new characters, and defining the world these stories would inhabit. That approach was necessary, but it also limited how far the show could push its central conflicts. Season 2 no longer has that restriction. With the introductions out of the way, the writers are free to escalate, and the trailer suggests they have done exactly that. The threats facing the ranch this time are not simply personal rivalries or business disputes. They appear to be existential, the kind of threats that determine whether the ranch survives at all. Land, money, power, and legacy are all on the table simultaneously, and for the first time, the family may not have the strength to defend all of them at once. This is where Beth and Rip's role becomes far more interesting than a simple return. The trailer positions them differently than fans might expect. Beth remains the sharpest weapon in the family's arsenal, and her scenes carry the same intensity that made her one of the most iconic characters in modern television. But there is something new in how she is framed this season. She is no longer just fighting enemies. She appears to be fighting time itself, trying to secure a future for a way of life that the modern world seems determined to erase. Rip, meanwhile, carries the weight of a man who understands that the old ways are disappearing, and that the next generation will inherit whatever remains. Their storyline in Season 2 is not about dominance. It is about legacy, about what they leave behind and who they trust to protect it. And the answer to that question leads directly back to Carter. Carter's position in Season 2 is perhaps the most significant shift in the entire franchise. The trailer shows him taking on responsibilities that would have been unthinkable when he first appeared as a lost teenager in Yellowstone. He is no longer learning ranch life. He is living it, defending it, and being tested by it in ways that will define who he becomes. The parallels to Rip's journey are impossible to ignore, but Season 2 seems determined to prove that Carter is not simply a copy of the man who raised him. His challenges are different, his enemies are different, and most importantly, his choices are different. Where Rip's loyalty was forged through violence and absolute devotion, Carter's path appears more complicated, shaped by a world that no longer rewards the old code of the ranch. Oriana stands at the center of that complication. Her relationship with Carter deepened throughout Season 1, but the trailer hints that Season 2 will test that bond under real pressure for the first time. She is not written as a background love interest, and that becomes clearer with every scene she appears in. Her storyline seems to carry its own weight, its own conflicts, and its own consequences, some of which may put her directly at odds with the world Carter is fighting to protect. If the show handles this correctly, their relationship could become the emotional core of the entire series, the same way Beth and Rip once anchored Yellowstone. But that comparison is exactly what makes this storyline so risky, because every step Carter and Oriana take will be measured against one of the most beloved couples in television history, and the fan base has already made it clear that they will not accept a weaker imitation. Then there is Beulah Jackson, the wild card that changes everything. Her presence in the trailer is brief but unmistakable, and every moment she appears carries a sense of danger that the first season only hinted at. She represents a different kind of power, one that does not play by the rules the Duttons understand, and her growing influence suggests that the biggest battle of Season 2 may not be fought with guns or land deals at all. It may be fought in ways the family has never prepared for. And if the final seconds of the trailer mean what many fans believe they mean, then one of the most important characters in this franchise may not survive to see how that battle ends. So the real question becomes, who is Season 2 willing to sacrifice in order to build its new future?